Okay, well, welcome to today's sharing and resource session, Adaptive Assistive Technology to Support Post-Secondary Students Diagnosed with Concussion and Post-Concussion Syndrome. This event is being hosted by the Network of Assistive Technologists and facilitated by one of our own members, Ann Newman. Just before we get started, I wanted to go over a few little housekeeping details for us, and that is that captions are available by visiting www.N.O.A.T.ca/CC. So note.ca/CC. You'll find a link there to open up the collaborative document, which is displaying the closed captions. So, and I do ask that you join in our time together today, and encourage you to contribute to the discussion through the chat feature in the webinar interface. Later on in the session, there will be an opportunity to join in live using your microphone and/or camera. So I encourage those of you who are able to do that as well. And this reminder that this is a discussion and sharing session, so it is a lot participant driven. So a replay link will be sent out after the event, as well as replay video posted to the N.O.A.T website. And that'll happen shortly after today's event, as I say, but the discussion will be ongoing through an AT for Concussions resource page, which will be coming to the N.O.A.T website. So this living resource will allow the conversation and resource sharing to continue beyond today's session, and we'll be sending out details about that at a later date, hopefully with the replay. So at this point, I'd like to introduce our facilitator today, Ann Newman. We're very fortunate to have Ann facilitating our discussion. She is the adaptive technologist at the Adaptive Technology Center in the Stouffer Library at Queen's University. That center provides quiet study space, services, and supports to referred students who identify as having a disability, including learning disabilities, autism spectrum disorder, physical or mobility issues, vision or hearing loss, cerebral palsy, mental health, stress, anxiety disorders, sports-related injuries, and of course, concussions. So many of these students also have dual diagnosis. Ann keeps herself busy with continuous learning on a number of topics near and dear to her heart, concussions and post-concussion syndrome being just one of those. You'll also find Ann active in the N.O.A.T online community, always eager to help other AT professionals. And a special thank you again to Ann for facilitating today, sharing her knowledge, and bringing the AT community together for this sharing and resource session. So with no further delay, Ann, I'm going to hand things over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm just in the process of getting this going. There it is, and share. And Doug, are we seeing that yet?
You are. If you can just go into full screen for your presentation. Right now, we're still in the slide sorter view.
Okay. Well,
just while you're doing that, I'm noticing that in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for chiming in here as to who's with us and where you're coming from. We have people from Richmond, Virginia, Barrie, Ontario, New Hampshire. We got
are we there?
College. You're still in slide sorter view.
Oh.
If you up on slideshow tab, and then we should be able to. Yeah.
And so on my third screen, I'm getting.
Okay. If you click. You drag over from your third screen. I think you've already got it in full screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so if you drag that over, we should be able to get that.
No, it's not letting me do that.
If it wasn't for the snowstorm you're experiencing, Ann, I'd be happy to send an assistive technologist
I
down.
know you would. I know you would.
So I appreciate everyone's patience as we work through this. Technology is wonderful in rehearsal, and it's wonderful when it works.
I'm confused as to where I'm having trouble, because on the third screen, as I saw yesterday, it's giving me exactly what I wanted.
Okay.
I wonder if if the problem is where I decided to put it.
I think that might be.
That might be it. Okay, so let me,
Yeah.
can I get back to the share window, Doug?
Yeah, it's at the top if you click stop sharing.
Okay.
There. And then if you,
Okay. All
and
it
then
says is resume sharing.
Yep, so if you click the X in that, I think you should be.
Oh, I'm really sorry, everyone.
Oh,
Let's try this again. Okay, screen 3. Did that
there
help?
we are. Yep, and then if you go up to the top under that display settings and swap out your presenter notes. So at the very top, your display settings.
Oh, don't see that, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, wait, it came back. Where did that go? Display settings, okay.
Yep. And then swap presenter and slideshow. There
Okay.
we are. Perfect,
Are we
Ann. We're perfect.
Sorry, everyone. Apologize for the holdup. Because of that, we are going to bypass that first one right into the second. And obviously, Doug has done a fabulous job with introductions today, and I sincerely appreciate all of his help. Thanks so much, Doug, for allowing us and welcoming this opportunity for us to get together and share. The first thing I want to point you in the direction of is a really great explanation of what concussion is all about. And if you'll take the time to listen to this quick info bite.
A concussion is a type of mild traumatic brain injury that can happen when your head receives a hard blow. Your brain is the most fragile organ in the body, with the same texture and consistency as gelatin. Your skull provides a hard protective shell around your brain. A watery substance called cerebrospinal fluid surrounds your brain. Cerebrospinal fluid cushions your brain against impacts with the wall of your skull during everyday head movements. This cushioning effect protects the billions of nerve cells, called neurons, inside your brain. Each neuron communicates with other neurons through electrical signals that travel down a long thread-like extension called an axon. A hard blow to your head can cause your brain to strike the inside of your skull. During the impact, your brain squeezes against the inside of your skull, sending shock waves through your brain. These shock waves tear or stretch the axons of some neurons. This trauma is called diffuse axonal injury, or axonal shearing. The damaged axons reduce normal brain function by interrupting communication between the neurons. Depending on where your brain is injured, physical symptoms of concussion may include headache, nausea, dizziness, poor muscle coordination, light sensitivity, blurred vision, ringing in the ears, blurred, and loss of consciousness. You may have mental and emotional symptoms, including disorientation, confusion, memory loss, inability to focus and concentrate, irritability, and depression. For a mild concussion, your doctor will advise you to rest and monitor your symptoms to make sure they don't get worse. You may receive prescriptions for mild pain medication such as acetaminophen or ibuprofen. Only take drugs recommended by your doctor, as others, such as alcohol, may slow the healing of your brain. Whether or not you've been to the doctor, if you experience loss of consciousness, a headache that won't go away, vomiting, or slurred speech, you should seek emergency medical attention. These symptoms are danger signs for serious complications of concussion.
Alrighty. I have found that that is the best explanation that I have been able to locate on this topic, with an understanding to exactly what happens within the brain and the disconnection to the ability to process thought. There's a small note here that everyone should seek direct medical attention, because how your recovery process is planned is directly linked to the amount of damage that's done. There's a great article link there. Moving on to our next slide. I wanted to gather some background on the statistics that we're looking at. In Ontario and Alberta, the provinces are responsible for reporting, and this reporting is done, statistics of diagnostic numbers of concussion happen at the emergency department. So these numbers that you're looking at are actually quite low, because there's no information submitted from primary care physicians, from after hours clinics, or other places where someone might seek help for the injury that they've sustained. These studies are documented, and when Doug puts up the slide deck, you'll have access to these links following our discussion today. You can't talk about this in the province of Ontario without talking about Rowan Stringer. Rowan was a young gal who was playing in secondary school. She was playing rugby, and Rowan sustained a number of concussions. She actually passed away from something called second impact syndrome, which is swelling caused by subsequent injury, which occurs before a previous injury has healed. She had sustained 3 concussions over 6 days while she was training and competing. Rowan's family didn't know about the implications of this. Rowan's coach didn't know. And Rowan didn't seek medical help until, unfortunately, it was too late. And so Rowan's family have taken it upon themselves to advocate on behalf of families and students in Canada to make sure that there is an increased awareness. And that increased awareness has driven the legislation, the knowledge, the committees, the studies, and the gathering of data that we now have access to. The other thing that I found was really interesting when I went digging around into this was the number of post-secondary institutions which have established centers to assist and support athletes and students diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury. Have a look at that list. That's a pretty substantial list of universities that now have a designated center to assist with concussion on campus. We all know that universities invest heavily in their athletics and varsity sports programs. This is a document that Parachute Canada, who are closely associated with the government and many different concussion and traumatic brain injury organizations, have published. I'm not going to go through it. I'm not going to read it. The link is there. It is a well thought of document with return to school, return to sport, basic guidelines for students and families who have experienced concussion. Where are those referrals coming from? Well, they're coming from many of the places that we are currently getting referrals from other issues. So accessibility services, student wellness, student academic support. In our case here at Queen's, they're coming from occupational or physical therapy, sports and recreation departments, learning strategies or transition programs, our regional assessment centers that do psych ed assessments, The other place where I'm seeing referrals come from are the student-organized concussion awareness committees. We do have a very active concussion awareness group here on campus that meet monthly. They're proactive in social media, and when one finds something that helps them, they refer their friends, and I'm happy to see them. So here's another quick video, and you'll say, why are we watching all these? Well, I want to point you in the direction of this one because this comes from the Ottawa Hospital, and the Ottawa Hospital has
concussion. A concussion is a mild injury to the brain. It's frequently associated with a blow to the head or to another part of the body that causes the head to spin or jolt, such as with a fall or a motor vehicle accident. Concussion can occur with or without loss of consciousness. It's important to see your healthcare provider or go to the emergency department should you experience any head trauma or suspect a concussion. Concussion symptoms. There are many different symptoms associated with concussion, but not everyone experiences these the same way. After a concussion, people usually experience a combination of symptoms. These can be physical, such as headache, dizziness, balance problems, or sensitivity to light and sound, or sleep issues. Cognitive symptoms, such as fatigue, slow or foggy thinking, difficulty with attention, concentration, and memory, difficulty making decisions or problem solving, difficulty with organization and planning, and emotional symptoms, including irritability, sadness or depression, frustration, anger, worry, and anxiety. A full recovery from symptoms is seen in the majority of people. However, patterns of recovery vary from person to person. Some symptoms might last longer than others, and these symptoms will need to be managed as you continue to recover. It's still unclear why some people experience lingering symptoms and others don't. It is important to note that if at any time during your recovery your symptoms are not improving, change, or worsen, you should follow up with your family doctor. And it is recommended to see your family doctor regularly during your recovery as well. There are other healthcare professionals who can help you in your recovery, such as a physiatrist, occupational therapist, physiotherapist, speech-language pathologist, psychologist, neuropsychologist, or vocational rehabilitation counselor.
I'm pausing this video right there because I think that care team should also consist of adaptive technologists or people in our area of our vocation who can be helping these students at this point in time.
Seek out professionals who have experience working with concussion and brain injury.
I think that's a worthwhile little watch. The only reason I put that in there was because the Ottawa Hospital have done an extensive series of small snippet videos based on concussion and post-concussion syndrome. Take a look at them. There is probably 9 in total. They talk about vestibular issues, vision issues, all the different related issues concerning concussion that relate to the type of problems that we see and the type of areas that we're trying to provide students with support. Impacts on learning, what we know. So what is it that the students are finding so difficult? They're dealing with cognitive changes, recalling short and long-term memory, retaining new information, comprehension, their executive function, oh my goodness, scheduling, it's planning, keeping up, their physical issues, they're so individual depending on what kind of injury they've had and where that injury, they may have chronic pain, they're dealing with the psychosocial issues. If these kids have only ever played this sport and that sport, brought them to this post-secondary institution, and that sport is all of a sudden taken away from them, their social group, their exercise, their outlet, their connections are gone. And that's a huge problem for these kids. Sleep. Many of them deal with a horrible time trying to sleep. Fatigue, overstimulation. And when you connect the dots, then you've got risk of mental health and addiction concerns. There is a complete edition of Synopsis Winter 2017 that is completely focused on the role of psychology in the concussion crisis. I encourage you to have a look at it. The link is there. Where does this become a link for us? Well, it's documented in many, many different articles, and you're going to see those in a list of resources that I've attached for you, that physicians see significant links between learning disabilities, autism spectrum, vision, and hearing. So the kids that are diagnosed with concussion have exemplified problems if they've already have an existing diagnosis. So a learning disability, they're already struggling. Add concussion to this, and all of a sudden you've compounded the problem with other issues. What can we do? Well, we can serve them as similarly as we serve the kids that have mobility or physical issues. We can review the shared notes from the referring departments. If the accessibility advisors are willing to share those notes with us in confidence, of course, we can look at some of that background and see where others have commented and learned from their shared knowledge. Give them time and attention. These kids need a really student-centered approach. I know if you have anyone in your family that you're providing care for, there's a huge focus today in healthcare on patient-centered care. Well, this is student-centered care. As we do for any other reason these kids are referred to us, we pay individual attention because every single concussion diagnosis must be looked at individually. Provide empathy and support and encouragement. They will progress, and as they progress, it's so rewarding to see how they recover and how much better they feel about those tiny steps forward they take. And obviously be prepared to modify and accommodate as required. This is the last video bite I want to show you. It helps us understand the difference between what concussion is and what post-concussion syndrome looks like.
Concussion versus post-concussion syndrome. The difference between concussion and post-concussion syndrome is commonly misunderstood, and these terms are often used incorrectly. Concussion is a brain injury caused by a biomechanical force, such as a trauma or impact, leading to transient neurological dysfunction and a wide range of clinical symptoms. The underlying biochemical, metabolic, and physiologic changes that define the acute injury are temporary, monophasic, and thought to resolve within 1 to 2 weeks. In most cases, clinical symptoms follow the same course and completely recover within a similar time frame. However, some people will experience persistent symptoms after a concussion for months or even years. The continuation of symptoms after a concussion has healed is known as post-concussion syndrome. Post-concussion syndrome is not a prolonged or more severe concussion, but a continuation of symptoms for other reasons after the concussion is felt to have resolved. There is no specific time cutoff that distinguishes concussion from post-concussion syndrome. However, when symptoms persist for longer than 2 to 3 weeks after an injury occurs, post-concussion syndrome should be considered when specific contributors to the ongoing symptoms should be explored. In most cases of post-concussion syndrome, there is an initial period of improvement as the concussion heals, followed by a plateau and subsequent up and down symptom course. A detailed history and examination are essential to develop a complete understanding of all factors leading to symptoms at that point. Typically, there are multiple elements interacting with each other over time causing post-concussion syndrome, and the result of these entangled problems tends to be much greater than the sum of the individual components. Each contributing factor needs to be addressed individually to make post-concussion syndrome is multifactorial and different for every individual. The factors that contribute to post-concussion syndrome are usually related to a combination of pre-existing symptoms or tendencies, concurrent injuries from the same trauma, and changes that occur during the treatment and recovery from concussion. Pre-existing medical conditions that increase one's risk of post-concussion syndrome include primary headache disorder, such as migraine, disorders of sleep, ADHD, learning disability, and mood disorders.
And there it is.
Another contributing element to post-concussion syndrome is a separate injury or injuries that occurred simultaneously with the concussion but has not been adequately addressed. This can include cervical strain or whiplash injuries, peripheral nerve injuries, and eye injuries. In addition to the improper management of such concurrent injuries, the improper management of concussion itself can increase the risk of developing post-concussion syndrome. While brain rest is commonly prescribed following traumatic brain injury and concussion, excessive rest and avoidance of activity can worsen the prolonged symptoms. This is referred to as the unplugged syndrome. Instead, a graded return to usual activity should be recommended for most patients starting shortly after the injury. It is important to distinguish post-concussion syndrome from concussion because the management of these two conditions is different. Post-concussion syndrome requires an active and targeted rehabilitation and treatment process and is unlikely to resolve with just rest and waiting. Understanding the risk factors for developing post-concussion syndrome and recognizing and treating post-concussion syndrome early is essential for improving outcomes and minimizing recovery time. For more information on concussion and post-concussion syndrome, including the 2014 continuing issue on sport,
Most informative and very helpful. So where do we fit into this? Where do we, and the work that we do and the space that we provide, how do we assist these students? We assist them similarly to as we do with other things, but we modify it. We look for quiet study spaces with alternate forms of lighting. Obviously, these kids are very light sensitive. So if you can offer them floor lighting instead of overhead lighting or task lighting, makes a huge difference. Ergonomic seating, height adjustable work surfaces. Text-to-speech software to assist with course reading. Comprehension is one of the areas they struggle with most. Any kind of dictation or recording software to reduce writing time. This varies from student to student, but some of them really do appreciate this. Audio recording to capture lectures and course notes. Again, they struggle getting to class and they struggle being able to keep up with what's being said. So anything that can offer them a way to capture that, any tool or device, anti-glare screening to reduce blue light and reflection. This is a huge one. And there are a number of students that also find those anti-glare glasses. I've heard from some of the kids that they find those to be really helpful. Other students I've found have invested in a good set of noise canceling ear plugs because they find that they're not only light sensitive, but they're noise sensitive and they have a more difficult time blocking out noise. So it could be earplugs that help them. Calendaring and scheduling, time management reminder apps, they really do wrestle with staying on schedule. Frequent breaks to rest and regenerate. I've also heard from them that practicing mindfulness and meditation or yoga can be very, very helpful. And mentoring and connections to their peers with lived experience. This group that we have here on campus that is student organized, student run. It's an awareness committee. They organize a conference every year. It's happening for us again the end of February. These kids are really dedicated to what they're doing. It's changed their lives, and so they want to share with others what's happened to them. They want to work together to make things better. They want to share resources, and they want to help each other. And many of these kids are studying kinesiology, as it turns out. Rather interesting. And here's where you guys come in. So I've got a couple of pages of additional resources that are going to follow up here. But at this point, I'm going to stop sharing if I can figure out how to do that. And open up.
And don't stop sharing. We'll just.
Okay. You're going to open this up, Doug, are you?
It's open right now, and yep. So I'm sorry to interrupt. I just didn't want us to have to get back in there. So continue, Anne.
No, I threw some ideas up on this slide that were discussion points that we could talk about. But as you'll know, other is there, and I am so open and so interested to hear what everyone else's experience is, because once I did some digging into these numbers, there's no way that all of us aren't somehow trying to manage this. So please jump into the conversation.
Okay. All right. That's wonderful information, Anne, and I don't want to take up any more time with thanking you for all that, because we'll do that at the very end. I want to get us right into, like you've said, into the discussions and having other people come in with questions and suggestions and just discussion in general. So for that to happen, there is a chat function within the Zoom webinar software. I encourage people to use that. And I'll keep an eye on that and bring those questions forward. And as well, if you'd like to unmute yourself, and or if you feel brave enough that you do want to share something on the screen and share a tool with us, or that, by all means, that's an option as well. So while I allow everybody to kind of get their bearings on if they want to unmute themselves and such, I'll just bring up one of the comments that Debbie has made so far in the chat window. Is she is mentioning that a lot of her students are with concussions prefer printed materials over computer screens, and she's wondering if anyone has worked with any of the Eink monitors. And I would add to that not just the Eink monitors, but the Eink tablets as well, such as the Remarkable tablets is one that I know of, and I think Sony has one out as well. So that's one question. Did you have anything to add to that from Debbie, Anne, or anybody from the audience?
I'm familiar with that, but I'm certainly interested to learn more about it. Maybe Debbie would be willing to share some of that with us.
Okay. Well, Debbie has, she doesn't have audio or mic, but their student athletes are also self-organizing to support each other. So that's that ties back to something you've experienced as well, Anne.
Yes, definitely.
So, okay. So, and Debbie says Books Max does monitor and tablet, but it's about $800. So Book says, she spelled it out here, B-O-O-X and then M-A-X. So
okay.
This is always the fun part about keeping up with chat monitoring here. So bear with me for a second.
Notes.
Yeah, so is any, I'm not sure if anybody's got their microphone unmuted, feel free to speak up if you'd like to contribute. Okay. Melissa is saying that their numbers have definitely increased. So consensus is starting to form there. And then we have one of your colleagues, Anne, from Queen's University, is in the Department of Occupational Therapy. They weren't aware of the Concussion Awareness Committee, and they're thanking you for that information. So,
yes, the group is the Queen's Concussion Awareness Committee, QCAC. They're available. You can find them on Facebook and on social media. They're also having their annual conference this year on Friday, the 28th of February, and it will be happening at the Isabel Bader Center. And they bring in a very interesting group of people to speak about their own experience with concussion. They bring in professionals, they bring in people from the organizations. It's always a very worthwhile day.
Hi, Doug.
Hi, go ahead.
It's Melissa.
Hi, Melissa.
Our university, we have a sports concussion team group. Everybody is referred to the same physician, and they stick to a strict return to sport, return to school. So it's nice to have a big support group here.
Okay, and just for everyone again, which institution are you with, Melissa?
Laurentian University in Sudbury.
Laurentian. Okay, yeah. That's great. So
Melissa, once the notes get up, will you add a link to that with a little bit of a description about that to the shared notes?
I could, yeah. It's strictly for athletes, but...
Right. Is there anything else on campus available just for students or for all students, not just athletes?
They all come to me.
They all come to you. Of course they do.
Yeah, we definitely support the students with exactly the extra time for exams, quieter space, ability to go in and get deferred exams if they can't study properly for their exams, extensions to assignments.
Right.
So we work with the profs pretty close too.
So definitely providing those accommodations.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly as you would to students with learning disabilities. etc.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So the crossover really is there, isn't it?
Yep.
And yet there's no guidance anywhere. There's no policy, there's no documentation anywhere. There's nothing written down for us to go by. We just have to learn by doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, the reports that we get from the concussion specialist,
Mm-hmm.
they're really, really verbose. Like it's anything and everything is in there.
That's excellent.
Yeah. What
So
not to
very
do.
much like a psych ed assessment.
Absolutely.
That's excellent.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
If you want, I could get you a blank one and share it.
That would be super. Yes, it would be
Okay.
very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Melinda.
These resources that are being raised here, whether they're programs or as you've just offered there, one of the blank referral or report forms there, these are the things that we'll definitely be putting into the resource page and that and building so that we can have them at for everybody's benefit and that. So I appreciate everybody bringing those to the table here. Just looking here through the rest, if anybody else has got their microphone unmuted and has anything else to add, please just interrupt.
Hey Doug, it's Clark at McMaster.
Oh, Clark, go ahead.
Hi, I just thought I would mention the books product that Debbie mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Onyx Max 3 is an e-ink display Android tablet. And we purchased one earlier in the year for students to take out and use, except it's the Onyx N.O.A.T. It's a slightly different model. What's interesting about the Max 3 is that it has the ability for you to write on the screen with a stylus. So it's similar to a paper experience, which is, I think it was mentioned earlier, a lot of students with concussions do like using paper. But what the extra functionality that the Max 3 has is you can actually, it'll take an HDMI input. So it can become a monitor right from your MacBook or your computer. And
sounds quite extensive and impressive. What was the price on it, Clark?
Yeah, it is. It's good. It's a little bit more than 800 for the Max 3. I mean, I think it's probably 800 US. Okay. But being having an HDMI input is great. A student that I'm working with this year that has a visual impairment actually purchased this because it doesn't have a glare. It's a matte screen, and that's really important to her. So it's also helpful for students with visual impairment. So
it's excellent information. I appreciate that, Clark. And I did notice that in the chat window you had put down here about the Onyx Max 3. So yes, I'm glad you were able to speak directly to that.
Yeah, I'm going to share the link in the chat. Okay.
Absolutely, that's fantastic.
That would be excellent. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Hi, I'm not sure if you all can hear me.
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Tiffany O'Neill. I'm with George Mason University.
Yes, welcome.
Hi, I just wanted to bring up, I'm really glad to learn about the e-ink. I've never heard of it, and I'm definitely going to share that with our team here. But I looked back at the list in the previous slide about the resources that we do have at our disposal, and I just wanted to kind of just bring up for the glare, we do have those built-in features, and that we should just be mindful of those things that students already have in their possession. The screen, high contrast features and things like that, that they can just adjust the screen to get that black background with the white writing. Just the things that the students already have on hand to help for when they have no choice but to look on the screen. I totally have had students come in and say that the screen was an issue but just simply changing the contrast and the lighting on the back of the screen has helped a lot.
No, absolutely, and trying to keep things to what's already either built in or what's readily available.
Yeah.
It brings back memories of students having to carry around specialized equipment from classroom to classroom, when nowadays, if we're just using built-in features, it's readily available more or less wherever they go.
Right,
So
and a lot of the Chrome apps are even starting to add things where they can do that by Chrome extensions, adding certain features to help minimize light issues and things like that.
Yeah, and on that note, if you have specific Chrome extensions or any specific tools that you have found helpful and would like to recommend, please, when the collaborative sharing documents come out, and or even right now into the chat window, I encourage and ask that you share if you're able.
Absolutely.
So,
Can I ask a question from Clark?
Hi there, yes.
Were you able to get them that on bursary for the student, or did they pay for it themselves?
On bursary, yeah, on bursary to the maximum, and then the student added the extra money to finish to make it the rest of the way there.
Okay, interesting, because my request was shot down.
Oh, that is
But
interesting.
thanks.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there's various levels of financial aid and support programs out there that make some of these things attainable and not attainable, depending. Just a side note: keep an eye out for an upcoming webinar where we'll be looking at some of the barriers to accommodation, and that's one of them. So it's interesting to hear that, and you're both in Ontario, both working under the same funding system, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay. I just want to mention that Debbie had put into the a note about that $800 tablet, the one version of what you were talking about as well, Clark. And Jenny is putting Eink that she's aware of, the dashing paper like. I guess that's another device. And some other people mentioning about that they've looked up these Eink. So whoever, I can't remember at this point, whoever started the Eink discussion, and that I think is going to be getting a pretty good commission check from the manufacturers.
I think so.
Does
anyone use or have experience with the Reticare screen protectors?
Okay.
How do you spell that?
Reticare, Reticare. And they're designed specifically to deflect and reduce blue light.
So Reta as in the starting of retina.
Yes, care.
Okay. And then
yes.
care. Okay.
And they make screens sized for our protectors for all screen sizes, from mobile up through large screen desktop versions.
Okay. So if anybody has, sorry, go ahead.
A couple of students and one faculty member who are using them, and they found them to be really helpful.
Okay, so if anybody has experience with that, please do share, whether it be through the microphone or in the chat. Just noticing here that there's Dasung monitors, DAS as in Sam, UNG, that are about $2,000. Debbie is saying that they haven't been able to get funding or to even try it.
No, I can only imagine.
Yeah. Oh, Jane is concurring that the numbers have increased, although she hasn't used the Eink. She's interested to, and mentioning the Erlen filters are helpful and colored paper for exams. And I noticed that there was a comment further down about someone asking if anybody had any input on the Erlen filters. So if somebody in the audience is able to speak to the Erlen filters, that would be helpful.
Erwin, Doug, as in IRWIN?
No, sorry, IRL as in Larry, EN.
Oh, okay. Erlen.
Hi, Doug. It's Jane.
Hi, Jane. Yeah.
So we've been using them here for a while. The nice thing about them is that they're a little bit more hardy than just transparencies that you get at Staples or something like that. They do have a matte side and a shiny side, so you can place it face down on the a piece of paper or your screen, and there's a matte side to reduce glare. They do have things that they call clings, which the clings are supposed to be things that actually stick a little bit better to your computer screen. But I found that just the plain old filters, which are the transparency like sheets, are just fine either for the screen or for reading. But I share the concern with everybody else that, you know, they're a one-off thing because they get cat hair and you don't want them back once they've been sent out. It's not good.
So try and find them at the dollar store is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not sure you'll find these at the dollar store just because they have a really nice matte finish, and they're a little bit more expensive. So you can get a pack of like 5, I think, for I think it's like $25 US or something like that. Like, so they're not cheap, but they're a good tool if you can have students try them out in your office, you know, or you know, just give it a try, and if they don't, you know, use it for a day and then bring it back. But yeah, if you get it back after a week, it's not really
That's excellent.
cleanable.
Yeah.
That's a really, a pack of 5, you could have one on your mobile, you could have one on your tablet, you could have one on your laptop.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite an affordable solution for someone.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
I do have a tool that I'll share in a little while with, I just want to work through some of these comments because I'm noticing some of the time, ideally we try to keep our webinars to an hour. It's absolutely no problems from my perspective, and Anne has shared that it's fine with her if we go over, but being respectful of that, if just to try and get through most of these. And then I do have one tool that I'll share that it mimics the Erlen filters, but it's a computer program.
Oh.
It's only $20. So now that I've got everybody excited, let's continue. Casey is asking if anyone can share some tips on how to get the information you need from doctors to better accommodate students with concussions. And I think this says it all, is sometimes their letters are lacking. So is anybody brave enough to address that?
We have a functional limitations form that we will often use.
Okay. And that's through your disability department.
Yes, it's one that we came up with.
I would encourage, if you get permission to be able to share that, I'd encourage you to add it in.
Certainly.
Okay. Or add it in and ask for forgiveness later.
Exactly.
So Debbie is saying that we've been wanting to try this Onyx Max 3 to let the students keep using their own with concussions, so they can keep using their own laptops. The problem with text-to-speech is that many of their students have said it causes migraines worse than the screens. She's done some human screen reader work with them to help them through doing research projects because the voices weren't successful. So it's an interesting point to share from Debbie. Not sure if anybody has anything to add to that. Okay. So
on the screen reader thing, Doug.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering about if any students have been turning off their screens. Sometimes somebody's saying at the end of the day their eyes are tired, or they need to just reduce stimulation. I've been directing them to a screen reader and then to set up a sort of a long couple of pages, and then they just turn off their screens or dim their screens all the way down. Has anybody ever tried that before?
So that they're just listening, Clark? That's what
that's right.
Not following along.
That's right. They're not watching, they're just listening.
They're just listening. I think that's a much better way for them to be able to do it.
Okay.
And I have tried that with a number of students for similar they've raised similar concerns, and whether it's be the Cadillac of these tools, the Kurzweils, where they can they have the dual highlighting so that it allows them to reorient themselves when they do hear something of interest they need to focus back on. And some of the other tools have that as well, but I just make the suggestion to them exactly that, whether they turn the screen off, dim it down, close it away, look away, whatever the case is, and just listen.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to hear. I've also suggested it for students when they're note-taking in the class. If they touch type, to open up a simple editor like TextPad or Notepad, or even OneNote, and turn off their screen. And if they can touch type, then they don't have a screen to look at, and they just go.
Exactly, that's a great idea as well.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a question here from D. Green, commenting or agreeing with our previous comments about the anti-glare screen protectors being one-time use kind of products. I'm wondering if anybody knows of a reusable anti-glare blue screen protector that could be used on with multiple students over time. If anybody has any suggestions there, otherwise I think we're back to either a soft program or just accept the fact that these are one-time use products.
Would one of those anti-glare or privacy screens that we sometimes use so that students don't look at our computer, would that work?
If anybody has any input in that, I can say that they would probably, it would be a question of whether they're actually filtering out the appropriate stuff versus just changing the ability to see. So,
I can chime in on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, not from a professional, and I don't have a lot of experience with students, but from my personal, I had one on my screen at my former position. My desk was facing toward the door, and I had personal information on the screen. So I tried to use one of those privacy screens, and it actually was more difficult for me. I actually have convergence insufficiency, so I found myself straining harder to look past that screen to the content on my monitor. But I do know that blue light filters do work better for me. So, and that's just with convergence insufficiency. So I'm not sure how that would play out for a student with concussion or TBI, but I know with me that privacy screen didn't help at all.
So that's an interesting observation from personal experience. Did I hear somebody else just wanting to speak on that? Oh, sorry, I thought I had heard somebody else. So I appreciate you sharing there, and I would think that anything that's causing eye strain would have similar effect regardless of your diagnosis. So it probably would have an effect, the privacy filters. Plus, they're not as cheap as the other things.
True that.
We've got a comment here from Jenny. A super less expensive option is the flicker-free or reduced flicker monitors. BenQ and ASUS have two of the ones that she's heard of, and apparently simpler and less expensive than Eink. So that's something has anybody had any experience trying or if Jenny can speak to that further?
Hi, it's Jenny here. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, thanks, Jenny.
Hi, yeah, so I've only had a few patients who've used the Eink because they're so costly. I found the flicker-free or reduced flicker monitors to be really effective for a larger number of patients, but just how effective it is compared to the Eink, I would imagine maybe not quite as effective because it doesn't have that same Eink technology, but it does get rid of some of the flicker, which can it speeds up the speed, so it's not as sensitive that way.
Okay, so you've definitely had some direct hands-on experience with positive results.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about the flicker-free monitors?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Does it increase the refresh rate of the monitor?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it increases the refresh rate so that it's not picked up to be as slow and then causing as much strain.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Like my understanding is that the eye generally can perceive a little bit less than 60 hertz, which is where most monitors sit, like LCD monitors sit, and the newer monitors will jump to 120 or even 240 hertz refresh rate. So if somebody, like I personally can see a 60 hertz flicker, which it, like I don't know if you, like the new Christmas lights, the LED Christmas lights, I can see the flicker on those. And so if I can imagine if somebody else was experiencing that with a concussion, that it might be very aggravating. I guess they're pushing it beyond that, or is it sort of like just into the 120 or 240 range? Do you know?
I'm not sure actually, and I'm actually not sure like at what range is supposed to be, you know, like considered okay. This is a reduced intensity or reduced symptoms, and it might even be individualized. I'm not really sure.
Okay, cool.
Okay. All right, and Clark is also noted here about Mac OS X having a feature to dim the screens and make them more yellow. So again, back to some of the built-in tools. Sherry has suggested there's a Google Chrome extension called Blue Light Filter Guard that's been a hit with users. Jane was saying that she can speak to Erlin filters, which I think Jane already did speak to that.
Can I ask a question about the Erlin filters?
Go ahead, yeah.
So I'm hearing more about that and about using similarly different colored printer paper to reduce symptoms. And then I also, a little lower down, mentioned a type of software that one of my patients told me about called Read Easy software. And it's essentially an Erlin filter for your actual computer screen. But my question is, with all these different types of filters, how do you know which color filter you want to choose and which one's going to be best for the individual?
And did any of your research give any indications on how to do that?
Only it's an individual, only to direct to individual choices. So it's, again, it's trial and error.
Right.
Anybody else have any input on beyond trial and error? Anything that generally works better than others, or? No?
Yellow seems to be consistent. Across the board. It's the color that comes up the most when I'm working with students. So basically blocking out blue.
So yellow is a good place to start.
Yeah, and so a lot, like twice this year, students have gone to like the dollar store and purchased yellow glasses just because they found it helpful without even any suggestion.
I'm also seeing rose-colored lenses on campus here.
Yeah,
yellow and rose-colored.
That's why Bono wears them.
I was just going to say, I had a patient who had such significant symptoms that she ended up pursuing going to this clinic in Ottawa. It's called the Opticom Visual Stress Clinic. Anyone heard of this?
No.
Anyways, no.
I don't know how, I mean, they have a whole bunch of like evidence and articles on their site. I don't know how, like, I don't think they're even actually optometrists, but supposedly they do this testing to figure out which color is like the best for you. So my patient therefore figured out she had this specific green overlay is what she needs. So.
And is it helping?
She says it is, and it's just so hard to know because how much of it is placebo or not, how much of it is time, like it's just such a complicated thing.
Very much.
I definitely believe that, I totally agree about trial and error. I had a student, she just went to her basic eye doctor, and they trialed out some things and she settled on the yellow. And again, speaking about my own eyesight, I expressed to my doctor that I had some regular sunglasses that I bought, I think at like TJ Maxx, Target, somewhere like that. And he explained to me that it must have had like a blue light refractor on it, and that's why they worked well for me. So I think it just all boils down to figuring out which one works best. As far as like you were saying about the screen monitoring, the consensus on my campus is usually black background, white lettering, and a room that's not bright. And like even in my office, I have the covers that's on the lights, like the little blue fabric covers on the lights in our room, because we have, in my office, we have fluorescent lights. So when the students come in, I've even done that for them.
So some great suggestions there, and again, some personal confirmation. So I'm just moving through. If anybody has things to add, please interrupt me as I'm going through and just trying to work through the comments here. We've got a link here. Thank you for putting the link in for the Reedy software. And someone is asking, or Suzanne was asking about where to get the Erlen filters from. So Jane, if you might have a link that, if you could drop it in the chat, would be great. We've got a link here as well for a support page from Apple regarding the filter color, changing the filter preferences and that. Caleb has shared with us the f.lux or flux, and he's recommending that to students for eye strain and various other needs. And then we have a link here in the chat for Windows 10 using color filters, so it's not just a Mac thing. And I think I saw, yes, thank you, Melissa. You've dropped in the PDF link for the functional limitation resource, so that's great. Oh, and there actually, thank you, Jane. You had already done it. I just hadn't gotten to that for the Erlen order link. Amy is suggesting to create an MP3. That's a very basic suggestion that hasn't come up yet. Amy, are you able to speak to that?
Sure. So we use either Read and Write software to create MP3s or Balaboka. And so then they don't have to look at the screen to do the reading.
Okay. So then that becomes a takeaway for them instead of they can also listen to it wherever they want.
Right, exactly. While exercising or commuting or whatever.
Kurzweil will do that as well.
I'm sorry, you were cut off there a bit?
Someone said Kurzweil can also.
Kurzweil. Okay. Okay, and then we've got a note here about screen masking. Programs like Text Helps Read and Write has screen masking built in, so that helps, I guess, focus in on the specific area. Is Tennille able to speak to that?
Hi, it's Tiffany.
Oh, sorry, Tiffany.
No, it's fine. It just has my initial. But yeah, I wanted to go back real quick to Amy's comment. That is actually a wonderful suggestion, and I actually use that a lot with my students as well. In addition to creating MP3 on Read and Write, we also use Sonocent here at George Mason. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that, but it's an audio note taker. So students are able to record the lecture and highlight important parts of the lecture, but then in addition to that, they are then able to create iTunes or MP3 so they can listen to it. So I do suggest that as well. The Screen Masker on Read and Write, you can it'll let you shade out the part that's being read. You can either mask the whole screen, a section, a paragraph at a time, or you can thin it out so that it's only doing a sentence. You can change the color of that shading, and it moves down as the reader progresses through the document. So that's another thing that I have suggested to students who have issues with looking at a screen for a long time.
Okay. Out of curiosity, with Text Helps screen masking, does anyone, yourself or anyone else, know if that is included in the Chrome tools, or is it just in the full version of Text Help?
I want to say that it's once you, on the Chrome version of Read and Write, you log in, like for example, at our school, if they log in as an individual, they'd have to get the whole account. But with our license, they can log in under their Mason email account, and then they get all of the functions and features. And I believe that feature does stay intact on the Chrome browser version.
Okay, perfect, perfect. And again, I encourage people to continue to chime in if there's things they want to add. Thank you, everyone, for all these tips, and as Debbie's saying, so many great tips and information. Jane has mentioned recommendations from docs sometimes. Not sure what that was in relation to. Jane, did you want to add anything more to that? Or Jane may have had to leave as well. Okay, and Debbie, interesting research on green light for migraines, having dark amber glasses myself. So is there anything additional that you wanted to add to that, Debbie? Oh, again, Debbie may have dropped off as well.
Can I chime in again, Doug?
Absolutely.
It's Melissa. There's a free screen reader that's a Google Chrome extension called Just Read.
Yes.
And it's free.
It's free, and
it's free.
we had a look at that last week, didn't we?
I think we did.
Yeah, it's an excellent little application. So if you could maybe drop that if you haven't already into the chat, that would be that's one definitely to share. And some other links here, and Siri to decrease screen time on the phone, and recommendation from Suzanne. And Andrea is talking about FL41 glasses, kind of like rose-colored glasses. Has anyone used them? Anyone have any comments or response to Andrea? Andrea, do you want to talk further about that?
So this is Andrea. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't have experience using them. I actually work at Vision Loss Rehab in Halifax. But I have heard of these on a couple of webinars for like low vision, and how these are referred to as concussion glasses. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them, but they're basically the rose tinted glasses. They're supposed to help with migraines and concussions.
Okay. Yes, I have one student who's using them, and she thinks they're fantastic.
Okay. I appreciate you sharing that, Andrea, and something for us to look into, all these new tools. I can see our budget submissions now. Our managers are not going to be happy. Immersive Reader in OneNote also has masking and color adjustment. Yes, that's a great addition in regards. So it's free as well, if I'm not mistaken. And then Laura has got a link here for screen masking through one of the Chrome apps. Laura, if you're on, if you wanted to talk to that any further. No? Nope, again, Laura might have had to leave. And then Melissa has potentially got the last word here. She, yeah, just about the Just Read in the Chrome store. So busy chat, to say the least. Having worked through all of those, is there anybody that's that wishes to chime in and have any discussions or any further information?
Doug, I might add one other thing that I have been sharing with students this year.
Absolutely.
Just a little bit up, I shared a link to IKEA's website, and they have smart lights. And Nancy Waite in our library accessibility services put me onto this. It's an LED light that's dimmable. You know, you can purchase it with a handheld remote, and it's also, it changes color. So it can go from a blue-white light to like a very dim red light, and I find it very, very helpful to have that color change at the end of the day. And it also, it goes from being quite bright to very, very dim. So for instance, a student in residence where, you know, it's just having a single bulb on or off if they're trying to study, you know, maybe having a dimmable light that works in just about any lamp is something that they need. Maybe they only have so much they can work with. I think it's about $30, $35 at IKEA, and it comes with a remote, and it just works with any lamp. It's a standard light bulb. So
I'm very glad you mentioned that, Clark. I had sorry I had missed that link that you'd added into the chat. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's quite cool. Yeah.
Okay.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, Laura has just added in here that her mic's not working, but she's saying that the dark mode and screen mask are Google extensions. They're free and have been well received with her students. And thank you for adding that clarification in, Laura. So sorry, anybody else wish to come on? And
one last thing I could add. Just wanted to add one more thing. It's Tiffany again from GMU. For online learners who, not looking at the screen might be a difficult thing. Transcription, audio transcription software. I know Dragon has it where they can transcribe the audio. Might also be another good resource so that they could look back at what was said without having to focus so much on the screen. If I'm a visual learner, so I kind of need to look at the speaker. So if they're like in a real-time class, but staring at the screen the whole course is difficult, then maybe asking for a transcription from the professor or getting transcription software, audio transcription software might be helpful.
That is a great suggestion. Yes, thank you. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
Andrea here again.
Yes.
So I actually do a lot of low vision technology. So one of the things extensions that I like is called high contrast in Google Chrome. And you can actually make things grayscale. You can increase contrast. You can reverse color polarity. And then the other thing I like is the Speak It accessibility feature in Macs, where you can actually like highlight text. And I think it's like Control Escape, and it'll actually just read it to you.
Okay. So again, going back to the built-in features there. Okay, perfect. Anybody else?
Just in case you all missed it, Debbie just posted, I know she said that her mic wasn't working, a good resource is the Otter AI that goes along with the audio transcription I was just speaking about. It's in the chat.
Yes, thank you. I just was noticing that as well. That's great.
Otter's a great resource.
Okay. So,
Doug, did you want me to finish up with these last couple of slides?
Yeah, I do in one quick second. I just wanted to show or to mention that one $20 app that I was mentioning, so that people didn't get mad at me for getting them for keeping them waiting. And then definitely I want to hand it back to you, Anne, because you're the facilitator here today, and I feel that I've taken over the entire last part of the webinar here for you.
You've been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's just this chat. I've never seen such a busy chat. It's wonderful. So what I've had great success with students that I'm working with for various reasons, but definitely for the concussions and brain injuries, as well as some low vision students, as well as we're all probably familiar with the Claro tools, CLARO. Claro has a product called the Claro Screen Ruler, and it used to be only available as part of their big $200 and $300 package. But so I'm told it was a marketing decision to expand into different marketing channels to distribute their products. What they've done is opened it up as an app in the Windows 10 store, as well as the Mac store, and I don't mean the iPhone store, App Store. I mean the one for the actual desktops and laptops. And there's a slight price difference between Mac and PC of like $1 or $2, but once you $16.99, $17.99 in that neighborhood. So I always call it the $20 solution. And the Windows side does also have a 14-day trial. Sorry, somebody may correct me that it might be a 30-day trial, but I think it's a 14-day trial of the Claro Screen Ruler app. And it not only does the screen tinting of whatever color you choose, but you get to change the opacity or the depth of that color, as well as it has two additional features that are built into it. They call it a ruler and an underline. The ruler you can imagine as a see-through ruler that moves up and down with the mouse cursor. You can change the colors and the opacity of that ruler in the see-through portion. And you can also, with the ruler or with the underline, it's very similar, except it's just an underline that moves with the mouse cursor. And again, you can adjust the colors and the opacity of that. And then with the ruler and the underline tool, you also have the ability to combine that with the screen masking, either the entire screen or just above or just below the or neither actually for that matter, neither above or below, and just have the line going across. So it's quite customizable, and again, it's $20.
Nice.
So yeah, I've just double checked the chat, all the wonderful information. I think we've come to the end of that, and so just before we hand it back to you, is there anybody else that would like to come on with their and share anything with us?
I might share one more thing at
Absolutely.
McMaster.
Yeah, go ahead, Clark.
So this year, or maybe a little bit before, Nancy Wade and Library Accessibility Services did a lot of work in getting a space open for students registered with disability services. And she found a couple of pods, essentially they're topped seating stations that it's kind of like a love seat. There's two seats side by side, except it's kind of like bench seating with a top on it, and it's got sound absorbing material all around it, and it really reduces the amount of sound when you're for the person sitting in the pod. And a few students with concussions have been using that to take breaks between classes. Just an option for reducing stimulation. You know, I've been hearing students say that by the end of the day, they just feel like a raw nerve, and something like that is one way of trying to reduce the stimulation. Yeah.
Clark, would you be able to put a link to something like that in the chat box, or?
I put something up, just the Google search.
Okay.
And I can get you the exact pods that we had, if you like. I'll contact Nancy and see if I can't share it out on the chat.
That would be fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
And a picture without the two lovebird students.
That's right. Yeah.
If you can get it empty at any time, you might have to come in at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. Would be a rare occasion, I bet.
I would love to see that. Clark, you're the second person today who suggested that to me. Someone called in the office today trying to get some assistance with a person who their Lenovo smart display is not recognizing their voice, and we were trying to figure out a way to cancel sound, and that pod was brought up.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's a great idea. I was really surprised at how much sound it blocks out. It's really impressive.
Almost as though you're in a bit of a cocoon.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they said to me. They said that because the person's voice is very computerized, they said, the person who's speaking, and then they also have a respirator in the room, so they were trying to cancel out noise, and they recommended that pod.
And as Karen is saying, make sure that we don't have people wanting to nap during work hours.
No.
So,
not for staff.
Can't make any promises.
No, exactly. So, okay. If there's anything else anybody wants to add, by all means, chime in. But otherwise, I'd like to hand it back to our wonderful facilitator, Anne.
Oh, the facilitator is only as good as the participants. So the last couple of slides that I had there are simply resources, and the Concussion Online Awareness Training Tool is the second one there. It's an absolutely fabulous resource. It stems from British Columbia, where they've done an enormous amount of research. There's some great articles there, some really great statistics available from Public Health Ontario on the reporting. And the second resource page, the last two that I have highlighted there are really interesting articles that are speaking directly to the Canadian experience and the consensus statement on concussion in sport. That was drafted in 2016, approved in 2017, has really become the gold standard, as it were, with referring to how we look at concussion and how we help some of these kids. Unfortunately, as we already know, the bulk of information that's out there exists for clinicians and physicians and coaches, but we are making a huge difference, the group of us, in bringing this information into adaptive and assistive technology and supports for students. And I thank all of you today for participating and for listening in. And Doug's going to create a space within the Network of Assistive Technologists page where we can dedicate some space to this and continue to share. So what we've done today is just start the conversation. And I thank you all so much for coming and sharing with us. And I hope to see everybody maybe at the conference in May. We'll see. Thanks, everyone.
Yes. Thank you, Anne, and thank you, everyone. And I think the conference that Anne is commenting on is the Guelph Accessibility Conference that hopefully will have some AT or assistive technology components to that. And I encourage people to check that out as well. If you've never been to the Guelph Accessibility Conference, it's an event well worth checking out. So, unless there's another conference that you're mentioning, Anne, that I'm not aware of.
That's the one.
Okay, great. So again, a humongous thank you to Anne for putting this presentation together and for all of her work, dedication, research towards those with concussions, as well as thank you to all of the participants. I know that we've lost a few participants here at the towards the end, but those who are still with us and those who pick up on the replay, which will be sent out in the next few days. Again, I want to express a definite thank you for the participation and quite an active chat. So as Anne mentioned, and has been mentioned a few times throughout, we will have that space up on the N.O.A.T website, which is N.O.A.T.ca. So I encourage people to keep an eye on that and to contribute or keep contributing. And if you're not a member of the Network of Assistive Technologists, please go to that same website, N.O.A.T.ca, and consider joining. It's a free membership, professional network, professional community of assistive technologists. I'm losing my voice here at the end of the day. Assistive technologists and related professionals. So, and again, thank you everybody for participating today, and stay safe. And for those of us traveling through snowstorms, please be extra cautious.
Thanks so much, Doug.